Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier, with an overview of the key issues surrounding the Paris Peace Treaties that ended World War I. Now, as well as outlining the issues, on the slides I'll give you an indication of the kind of questions you might face. But the first thing to say with the Paris Peace Treaties is that the Treaty of Versailles was just one of 5 treaties. The treaties of Saint-Germain, Trianon and Neuilly should not be ignored, and certainly not the Treaty of Sèvres. And depending on the question, don't forget there is also the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk and Lausanne to consider. If either of these treaties are relevant to the question you face, you should include them in your response. But in this presentation, I'll focus on the Paris Peace Treaties. Now, ultimately, of course, you need to consider whether they were successful or not. And to do this, you have to consider their aims. Keeping the peace, again, of course, and in the process, making France feel secure. But what about the world they tried to create? Redrawing the map of Europe. Was Europe made more stable? Was democracy made safe? Was the Middle East prepared for independence? The true aim of self-determination, because that's what the mandates were supposed to do. Or were they merely poorly disguised imperialism, rewarding Britain and France? Ultimately, did they create more political problems than were resolved? But an overview of these treaties also needs to consider whether they were driven too much by revenge or whether they were fair. Again, whether they left Europe and the rest of the world more settled or whether they created new problems. For example, was the attempt to ensure self-determination for different peoples in Europe as well as the Middle East successful? In redrawing the map of Europe, did they create viable states? Again, ultimately, did they create more problems than were resolved? Were they ever likely to ensure peace? This will include the mechanisms put in place to ensure peace, notably the League of Nations and the notion of collective security, as well as how the treaties were received by the victorious powers as well as the defeated powers. And in your considerations, you should consider the wisdom of not inviting the Soviet Union as well as the defeated powers to take part in the peace conference. Linked to this, the territorial changes they imposed and the political problems they caused, and again, for the winners as well as the losers. And that it all went pear-shaped, badly wrong, is that entirely the fault of the treaties? Where does the balance of blame rest between the treaties, the Great Depression, and the rise of extremism in the form of fascism and militarism? What of America's responsibility after it walked away from what had been agreed in Paris? And to go back to Paris, was the emotional impact of the war simply too great to enable a reasoned settlement? Now, having put all these points on the slide, I would really suggest you keep coming back to this presentation and give some thought to the points I raise. Of course, I will cover them in more detail in other presentations, but this should serve as your revision guide as well as an introduction. Now, don't forget, there's my website, History Made Easier, Do check that out if you haven't already done so. It's there to help you too. But for now, as always, let me thank you for listening and wish you the very best of luck with your studies. Cheers.